Zach Lowe, I was listening to him this morning, and he was just kind of talking, going through a bunch of offseason news, and he brought up the Giannis piece, and he was talking about how, like, for now, he's like looking around, but there's nothing super tangible. We know all these teams are going to probe when the time comes, but he brought up Atlanta, and he brought up the fair point to bring up there, which is, well, if it didn't work with Dame super well, why would it work super well with Trey? And he was just bringing that up as a talking point. He didn't really dive into it. I don't think he is revealing his take there. I would imagine if Zach expounded upon that, he would probably agree with me that Trey is a better fit. But that's what I kept thinking when Zach brought that up. I thought, like, I think Trey's a very different basketball player than Dame. And I actually think flat out that is a substantially better basketball fit with a substantially higher ceiling. Now, to be clear, again, as we mentioned off the top, we know that Giannis is most likely going to start the season with the Bucks. I know that they're trying to make that work. I've had this conversation with Bucks fans on the show before. Like, it's just about acknowledging reality. You probably can't win. And if you probably can't win and you're not close to figuring out a way for him to win, and he's entering into this like early mid 30s phase of his career where you're going to expect to see just a tiny bit of a decline, it's kind of in the best interest for everybody for him to get traded. It's in the best interest for Giannis because he's too damn good to be on too limited of a roster. Like, the East is super weak and wide open, and it feels like the Bucks can't win it. And like, at least they're firmly in that second tier of contenders in the Eastern Conference where it feels like a bunch of stuff would have to go right. And that just feels like a shame for a player who is, like we've talked about, firmly in the race for the 2 spot in the NBA among players and still firmly in his prime there in his early 30s. And for the Bucks, right now they have no future. And a Giannis trade could be the vehicle with which to propel your franchise into the next era of Bucks basketball. So again, like, I get it. I understand. Bucks fans, you're probably like, I don't even want to fucking talk about this right now. And I understand that. But like, I just keep coming back to, I think this is probably what's for the best for both parties. So as we start to look around the league, I have literally not been able to stop thinking about Atlanta as a Giannis fit. I think it's by far my favorite Giannis trade destination. I like it because Atlanta's kind of a young, fun team that I have been super high on over the course of this summer. I think Giannis would immediately propel them into top-tier championship contention. I think that the fit on the roster is fantastic, which we're going to dive deeper into. And I think Atlanta can put together a pretty nice package for him. I think the package is something along the lines of Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu. The Hawks have a bunch of available first-round draft compensation, so they can load it up with picks. All of a sudden, if you're Milwaukee, you get this super exciting young player in Jalen Johnson who's athletic and will put together highlight reels and will be a really fun guy for the fan base to root for. You have legitimate first-round draft compensation coming back to restock your troves in that department. I think it just makes a lot of sense. Now let's dig into the basketball. And I want to start with the Trey fit. In theory, the Dame Giannis fit should have been better than it was. And even though they experienced highs and the Bucks had stretches where their offense looked amazing, it just kind of felt like Dame and Giannis never quite got to the level as a pick and roll duo that they could have gotten to. I think part of this is Dame and his age. Like, if it's 31-year-old Dame, it's probably a very different story. I think part of it is just the play styles. Dame has never been great at like change of pace in ball screens. And I think he struggled with that with Giannis as a role partner in terms of actually setting Giannis up with quality role man opportunities. Dame had this tendency to like just drive into the teeth of the defense instead of kind of more methodically work and pick and roll until the defense reacted to him so that he could set Giannis up with opportunities. I thought it was even jarring how like Kevin Porter Jr. seemed to have like some immediate natural ability to get the ball to Giannis in the pocket just because he played with more pace in the screens. And like it just never quite materialized the way it was supposed to. I even thought there was like way too much Dame Brooke Lopez pick and pop and pick and roll because of the fact that those two just seemed like more of a natural fit as a partnership. I think Trey would figure out how to be awesome with Giannis right away. I think within weeks, the two of them would be cutting teams up. Trey is one of those guys that has a couple of very glaring flaws that cause him to slip down in player rankings conversations. And like, I've had him outside of the top 25 often. He only broke in this year because of substantial injuries above him on the list that, and I think I can't remember exactly where I had him, but I had him like 24, 25 in that range. And I obviously view Trey as a player that comes with his downsides, and those downsides are obvious. Clear defensive limitations and competitiveness limitations on the defensive end of the floor. And then on the offensive end, he's extremely susceptible to switching. But outside of that, Trey's awesome. I view him as a legitimate offensive engine, an entirely different tier of overall offensive weapon than Dame was at the point of his career when he went to Milwaukee. I view him as one of the top tier playmakers and passers in this league. I view him as a guy that would immediately figure out how to turn that partnership into tons of awesome shots for both Giannis and for the other role players within Atlanta. I think that Giannis, we talked about Porzingis as like a fit to kind of help Trey with his susceptibility to switching. I think Giannis is a supercharged version of that. We went over Giannis's one-on-one numbers earlier. He's one of the better post-up players in the league at volume. Like I just think that fit makes a ton of sense. To put it very simply, I think Trey and Giannis would be a substantially better duo than Dame and Giannis were. And then from there, they have a really well-built roster for a Giannis group. The Kristaps Porzingis fit, we've seen that Giannis had chemistry with pick and pop bigs. We like the idea of having pick and roll flexibility with Giannis and Kristaps on the floor together, the ability to generate space with Kristaps as an above the break 3-point shooter, a better version of what Brooke Lopez was in his time there. They've got that depth of perimeter talent, so you can give up a Jalen Johnson in that deal. And thankfully, Jalen makes $30 million now, so he can take up a big chunk of the salary that you need to send out. But you can keep Zachary Rissache, and you can keep Dyson Daniels, and you can keep Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and you can have like a depth of two-way role player talent surrounding the Trey and Giannis duo. It even fixes one of the specific deficits on that Atlanta Hawks roster. As much as I like that Atlanta Hawks roster right now, they've got a deficit of ball handling. It gets pretty dark once you get past Trey. Giannis is going to deal with a similar issue in Milwaukee this year. It's a big part of why I've talked about him increasing his pick and roll volume. Giannis would come in and immediately fix their ball handling deficit because of his ability to run action with all the improvements he's made as a ball handler and as an advantage creator in the league. I just think it's the most fun. Giannis going to some awesome team like Houston or Oklahoma City, or him getting traded to New York to play for the Knicks, like any of those sorts of situations, they kind of feel too obvious and too like they lack some of that intrigue. And Atlanta, I just think, would be a super fun team for Giannis to go to. It immediately reinvigorates Trey as one of the more influential players in the league. It takes a fun young team and propels them from a lower tier to an upper tier. It makes the Eastern Conference, it maintains the strength of the Eastern Conference. We don't want Giannis to go to the West. He's the only top tier star in the conference right now. And so like if Giannis were to get traded, right now, I'm looking at Atlanta as easily my favorite spot for him to go. I just think it makes a ton of basketball sense. I've been thinking about it all day.